Here, Ms. Norton, thank you very much for joining us. Gentlemen, thank you very much for this evening. Eleanor Holmes Norton, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
I want to thank my good colleague from California for keeping before the Congress the notion of not only making it in America, but making some jobs here. You were just talking about infrastructure. Infrastructure is all made in America if we make sure that we don't build bridges, for example, from materials from China. But when it comes to the roads, when it comes to the cement, we don't get those from abroad. We make those here, and that's why infrastructure has always been the foremost way to stimulate an economy. It's interesting that it stimulates not only the construction trades, but it's best because it stimulates other parts of the economy below it. It's the way to get everything going. I couldn't agree with you more in pointing up, and you and I on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, the importance of infrastructure. That used to be the great bipartisan issue of the Congress of the United States, and I think there is some chance that it will be again. We note that this Congress, the bill that we just passed the last Congress, the Surface Transportation Bill, will have to be renewed in next year, and I certainly hope that becomes an opportunity to do a surface transportation bill for more than 2 years, and that's where we have to get to work right now. But I wanted to come to say to my friend, because I was so pleased that he was on the floor today, in particular at the time that the Ryan budget has come forward. And I note the very good news, the 246,000 jobs that the private sector on its own, with no help from the public sector and no help from the Congress, has come forward with, cheering all of us up. But Mr. Speaker, I do want to note that we are about to countermand all that the private sector is doing alone. And the reason is that the federal and the state sectors are doing just the opposite. They are reducing spending. The states and the cities are causing layoffs, and the result is that for every job that the private sector makes, we are moving in exactly the opposite direction because all oars are not in the water. If you're trying to bring growth, and thank goodness we have a private sector that is beginning to say we won't wait for the other oars, the private and the state oar, we're going in now, the rest of you should join us. The very least we should do, however, is to make it worse for the private sector to keep doing what it's doing. Sequester, of course, will do that. The markets have not reacted yet, but there is no way in which people in the private sectors, particularly small businesses, are going to continue to add jobs as they see that the federal and state governments are doing just the opposite. And the reason the state governments are doing that is because when we make cuts, that passes through directly to them. So they're trying to protect themselves because they must have a balanced budget. Since they must have a balanced budget, they are making cuts every single day, or at least reducing spending. And the Ryan budget comes forward, and in a real sense, it looks a lot like it's always looked. But look what it does. It makes half of it called savings from health care, Medicare, Medicaid, and of all things, the Affordable Health Care Act. I guess a budget ought to be, we ought to say a budget is what indeed it always has been. It's what you hope. It's a hope-for document. I hope that we don't get the Ryan budget, but I cannot believe that Mr. Ryan believes that at this late date, with an election already taking place, with the benefits of the Affordable Health Care Act flowing every day, that we're about to repeal that. Half of its savings, Medicare, Medicaid, the Affordable Health Care Act, and he caps food stamps. I want to say to my good friend from California, I think we ought to stop slapping the private sector in the face every time it makes jobs, making sure that we do cuts that take away the effects of those jobs. That's what we're doing. We talk about the way, and I note that you have one of the posters that show how we hurt people. We ought to also understand we hurt people and we hurt the economy at the same time, and that's why CBO says 700,000 jobs are at risk because of the sequester alone. Leave aside what the Ryan budget will do.
Well, Mr.